let's. All right. Last week, I hope you enjoyed the lesson last week because we're talking a little bit of a different approach on the Jesus' involvement with the Samaritan woman. Pastor's going to be preaching on it today. So it wasn't part of our scripture, but you know, her life changed so much, she was able to convince folks that probably looked down on her and everything else, that she was so changed that it changed their life. And they believed because of her testimony, and then they believed even more so as they came and met Jesus. The issue we were talking about was unsatisfied needs of people then, and you know, the unsatisfied needs of people today. And I think that in the church, even there's so many needs. The church is trying to do things that's probably making people more unsatisfied. Quite frankly, we're trying to pursue things. We're trying to be busy. We're trying to be legalistic, but I think that leads to unsatisfaction on our part. We hurry, we scurry around, but we feel empty, powerless, and lonely because that they haven't really placed their life in Jesus' hands. And that's, you know, the story of the Pharisees, the story of any legalism, and the way it goes. So we look back at the time when Jesus came to our life, that aha moment for us, and we want that testimony to help encourage us and help us to see others and to be able to start up spiritual conversations just like Jesus did with the woman at the well. Maybe somebody just needs us to say, hey, I see you, I love you, God loves you. So those are the kinds of things that we need to be able to say and do, but we have to see somebody to be able to do that. Those are those invisible people, much like this woman at the well was an invisible person, so to speak. So, okay. This week's lesson is on Jesus restoring our life. And this is sort of a neat take on something new. Have you ever run into a situation where you lost hope? You sort of got totally dejected. Maybe you were sick and you got frustrated because you didn't seem to want to get better. You know, you just sort of felt the futility of everything. Maybe it's because your kids, you didn't feel like they were going to listen to you ever. Maybe still not. Who knows?
That happens a lot of times with illnesses, either of yourself or with family members or others.
Yeah.
Long-term illnesses just seem to drag on forever. I think caregivers can get caught up in that loop, and it's very hard emotionally like that.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
Well, my wife, I know she felt bad because she was feeling bad all the time. And so she apologized, you know, which was sort of odd, but it was, you know, those kind of things, you know, she's like, and then right before, a few days before she died, you know, she almost like she had woken up out of a coma. And she asked, how long have I been sick? Mm-hmm. And she said, how did, you know, what happened to me? And she was just sitting there doing that. And I talked to her a while about it. We talked about it a while. And, but it was almost like she had come out of a coma and was wondering what had happened. And I told her she'd been like this for 2 years. And she said, really? You know, so it was very, very interesting, you know, but I think that was sort of the last thing, you know, right before she died, that she sort of gave her reality where she was, in her life and everything. And she was asking, you know, about, well, basically, am I going to get better? And I said, well, it's really up to you. You know, you haven't been able to make any progress on rehab or anything, but it's up to you on how you want to do and stuff like that. So very interesting things like that. Have you ever had a near-death experience where you felt like you were about to die? Yeah.
Yeah.
Right there in the fellowship hall,
You
right?
remember much about it?
No, it was, I was gone and then I was back, so.
the rest of us remember it.
Yeah, I hope you do, and I appreciate that.
you didn't get to see the light or anything, huh?
I did, you know, and I was never, even after I recovered and was in the hospital, realizing what had happened, I was never afraid. I always had the comfort knowledge that God had brought me through. And that was very comforting.
I don't know if I shared with y'all my two near-death experiences.
No,
Obviously
Just
not,
looking
or
here.
y'all remember either one. I had one where I was in a car crash, and somebody pulled out from behind two cars on an intersection into the road, and I T-boned them on the thing, and I'll tell you that the stories of having time sort of stand still. That's exactly what happened, because I was in a very small car, old Triumph Spitfire, and so as it went, I could see in slow motion the car collapsing into the other car, and then in slow motion, the hood is a single hood over the top, and it came like an accordion and was coming through the windshield into me. And then, and I've bent the steering wheel all the way into the dashboard, and my knees have gone through the dash. And so as I'm doing all of that, I basically said, Lord, I thought I had something else to do for him. I'm sitting there praying, and I said, Lord, I guess I'm coming home. I thought I had some other things you wanted me to do, but I'm ready to come home, and do that. And then all of a sudden, about this far from my face, everything stopped. So, and it was, that kind of thing. We have that near-death experience, things. And the next thing I heard was somebody who was in our Bible study group. He evidently saw the whole thing. I heard him yelling as he's running down the street, Buster! And so he grabs me and thinks that he obviously was never in the Boy Scouts. He grabs my arm and he's dragging me out of the car on that. And then everybody in the little fraternity house next to that, they paid just enough attention in Boy Scouts enough for a blanket. And so I had 10 blankets thrown over me before the ambulance got there. So,
But no one was digging a hole.
no.
So remember that.
So, but it was funny, just looking back at it and things like that. And then you look at a picture of it, like, the car's about like this, So how'd you get out of that? Well, it's just purely the Lord had something else. The other one was I was swimming off of Hawaii with a buddy of mine, and he'd gone out, and I'd gone and I'd gotten into. We were snorkeling, and I'd gotten into the current was carrying me out. And so I was swimming, and I got tired. I'm not a very good swimmer anyway, and I got very, very tired. And I got so tired I couldn't use the snorkel anymore, and I had to flip it off just so I could breathe. But I got so tired I couldn't swim anymore. And I finally just had to say, Lord, I am, I can't, I'm exhausted. I can't do this anymore. I'm coming home. And I stood up just to go underwater. I stood up meaning straight versus, paddling and whatever, fighting water anymore. And when I did, my fins hit a coral head. Because everything around me was a lot deeper. But my fins hit a coral head that was this big. So I sat there and I got, rested long enough to do that. And then I was able to swim back in. But again, I'd sit there and I basically just had commended myself to the Lord at that point. So those things happen when you get to those points where you're doing that, so whether you're sick and you're just sort of giving up, or, you have those near-death experiences, where you're able to fully see that, or things like I say, go into slow motion, see 1,000 things happen, in just those few milliseconds that happen, you have that going on. we're gonna do a story today where guys sort of lost that same kind of a thing. Now, I want to give you a few ideas here. We talk about it a lot. This is a replica of the Bethesda pool. It's not right though, because there were 5 colonnades. This one has 7. Okay. Now, colonnade is a row of columns. They call it colonnade. I guess because they can, I guess. Yeah. But it has a little roof over it. So we have our own colonnade guy here that makes his little porches.
You're a colonnade builder? You never told me that, huh? Didn't change my business.
You could charge more.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so you know you have this kind of look, but this is sort of the kind of thing that they do. Now you'll see a lot of old paintings, and I started to bring one of them up, bring up a picture of that for the pool there, but I thought it was just totally absurd. The picture and everything, because it's showing the angel troubling the water and stuff like that. So, but that's the kind of thing. But I want to give you an idea where it was. I always thought it was south of the temple, but it's north of the temple. I don't know why I thought it was south of the temple, but nowadays you can find a ton of pictures and graphs and everything else, so it's a little easier to find it. So I wanted to give you guys an idea. Okay. Now, well, let me start up here. Let's see if I can figure out how to get so Doug can see it too here. Okay. All right, up on the up here, this is a picture of what? What's this picture of?
Oh, that's Jerusalem.
Jerusalem. Okay.
You need to turn your image around because the camera's coming out the back, isn't it?
No, I flip it. Okay, so here's Jerusalem. This is, I'm standing on the top of the Mount of Olives here. In fact, this is where I bought this. It's on top of the Mount of Olives. Okay. So you're seeing a lot of things. Here is Gethsemane. Okay, you have all the old olive trees down here and things like that. Okay. And then here is the Temple Mount. The Golden Dome is where Abraham sacrificed Isaac, but the Muslims think that that's where he offered to sacrifice Isaac. It's where the Muslims think he offered to sacrifice who? His brother. Ishmael, his brother. Okay, so they have the story differently. This is the mosque that's been built here. Most of the folks think that the old temple was right in between. Certainly wasn't on the mount there. Some people thought there was always going to be a war because the issue of where it's going to be, that the Jews would try to take down the mosque over here to rebuild it and things like that. Okay, because obviously the rebuilding of the temple is a big deal. Okay, so you have that. You've got the Golden Gate, which is, I believe the story is that Jesus is supposed to come back through the Golden Gate. It's not closed. Muslims started burying people here because they said it's okay. Then you'd have to, when he comes back, he has to be unclean. He's going to come in that gate. Okay, so that's why you see that. Kidron Valley is just the valley that sort of, that goes down in right before you see the wall. Up on the left side is David's tomb is over here, and then right above that is where the Last Supper was. Okay. On the right side over here is where you're going to see the pool Bethesda right over here. Okay, and I'll show you that in a minute. It's easier to see it when I point it here than you can see it on the thing. Then the tomb, the two places of the tomb here and there, the garden tomb being over here, and Calvary being over there and stuff. And I'll show you that a little bit better when I do the other here. I'll show you the map here. Okay, so as you look at it, you've got, and I've got it turned around when I showed you guys the altar before. The altar is on the other side of what I showed you last time we had to do this, but then you've got the temple area, the women's area, the outside area here is the Gentile area. Okay. The pool here is near the sheep gate. Okay. Sheep gates where the sheep came in to be sacrificed. Okay. So you have the pool here. The pool basically provided water for the temple. Okay, then you have, all right, let's see, where's it at? Right over. Yeah, Golgotha. They call it traditional location, which is right inside. There's a big church, Church of the Sepulchre, I think it's called, where they also have the tomb there where they do it. But then you also have the oh, here it is over here, Golgotha. This is right above the bus station, and it's looks like a skull in the side of the mountain there. And then right back behind it is the garden tomb, where the traditional tomb is an empty tomb where they feel like it is.
What
Probably
did they,
place
what
where
did,
Jesus-
what did they, how did they, explain that the waters are stirred? What causes that? You ever heard
Well,
the hypothesis of that?
yeah, there's a couple things, but I'll tell you, I'll get to that when we get to the
Okay,
scripture in just
sorry.
a minute. That's all right. The so here you go, as I was saying earlier, the upper room being up here, the David's tomb being right along here, and then you see Caiaphas, the high priest's house, and things like that. The other things are here. Why I like this one is because it had Herod's palace, the all of that. So right over here, then was where Jesus was tried, and then where he was whipped, carried the cross, and then he basically marched it up from somewhere in here right up to here. Okay, and so you'll hear if you go to Jerusalem, it's marked on the path. You'll hear it called the Stations of the Cross. I think there's 14 stations of the cross. And you'll see that the first one's being, where he's tried. Okay. And then, the different parts along the thing is where he fell along the way going up, then where the other guy carried his cross. I can't remember the other guy's name. So those are the things that, that you'll see in Jerusalem. The problem when you see the walls, and what's really confusing about the walls is the walls have changed a whole lot over time. Okay. And so you have the walls when they were Jesus' time, and then you have the walls, later on, and things like that. And so even Josephus's, here it shows Josephus's wall. You have Josephus's second wall. You've got the temple wall. Oh, y'all know the Western Wall, the Wailing Wall, that's right here. Okay, so it's way down. So when you're looking at the temple here, it's on this back side. You see all these trees here. The back side, there's a walkway where you come into it, but you got to walk up about 2 flights of stairs to get up to it. So the Wailing Wall, if you remember, as you look at it, is way down below, and this is right up above there. Okay, you can see technically, you can see the mosque right above the Western Wall, Wailing Wall there. Okay. All right, so that sort of gives you the background a little bit of where the pool was and stuff like that. So with that said, somebody read the first verses for us.
By the sheep gate in Jerusalem, there was a pool called Bethesda in Aramaic, which has 5 colonnades. Within these lay a large number of the disabled, blind, lame, and paralyzed. One man was there who had been disabled for 38 years. When Jesus saw him lying there and realized that he had already been there a long time, he said to him, "Do you want to get well?" "Sir," the disabled man answered, "I have no one to put me into the pool when the water is stirred up. But while I'm coming, someone goes down ahead of me."
Okay, now if you'll notice, it skips a verse. Verse 4 is missing there. You'll see on the screen, I've got it in there. A lot of versions have partially or wholly, they'll add a little bit to 3 and then some to 4. Basically saying is waiting for the moving of the water For an angel of the Lord went down in certain seasons in the pool and stirred the water. Whoever stepped in first after the stirring the water was healed, whatever disease. So there was an old fable that was what caused it. So you'll see paintings of the angel that'll be shaking the water. Other people say, well, it's an underground spring and it's, the spring just getting a little bit of a pump to it at certain times of the year, causing the stirring of the water and stuff like that. Now, Jesus was into Jerusalem for the Feast of the Jews. Now, John sort of jumps around a little bit. John's not chronological. Okay. Jesus, if you remember, had been up in Galilee. He went before he went to he was in Samaria. Then he was in Galilee. He was in Cana, and now he's back in Jerusalem. Came in for a feast. Doesn't say what feast, but he's there. Now, John only talks about 8 miracles. Okay. There's 45 miracles, I think, mentioned in all the Gospels. Several of those in John aren't mentioned anywhere else. This being one of them. Okay. It's very interesting. Only one miracle is mentioned in all four Gospels. I got on this kick yesterday looking at where they all were and stuff like that. 12 of them were mentioned in 3 of the Gospels. Okay. So just to give you an idea, so 42 miracles that are listed. So, okay.
What was the one that was mentioned in all of them?
The feeding of the 5,000.
Okay.
All right, so the pool is named Bethesda or Bethsaida, depending on what manuscript you're reading. Okay, Bethesda means, y'all know what it means. You see Bethesda, the church is named Bethesda a lot. It means house of mercy. Yeah. Okay. So it has importance. The colonnades we've already talked about. There's 5 porches, so to speak, here. What's special about this place? What do they say is going on there?
Supposed to be healing in the waters.
Okay, there's healing in the waters. And so because of that, how many folks are there?
A lot.
A lot. Multitude, I don't know what all translations say on that word, but there's a lot. And it's a little bit of survival of the fittest, you know what I mean? You got to sit there and the water gets churned up and everybody's throwing each other down. But
If you were lame, like a lot of them, and paralyzed, how are you gonna get down there?
Some had family, would obviously have had family
Yeah.
members there helping.
yeah,
Why don't you just lay there and roll over into it? Somebody touch you.
That many people are there, it would be hard for everybody to be right there. The water's edge.
well, the issue is you're going to sit back on the porches where you're out of the sun. The issue is the question in my mind is you've got all these people, the blind, the crippled, the paralyzed,
Yeah.
all of them out there, that they're having to be taken care of by somebody. This guy doesn't have anybody to help him at all. So how's he getting food? So are the folks bringing food to him?
Get there in the first.
Do they take him and dump him there and kind of like a daycare and go back and get him in the evening or? And it doesn't say, do the waters get stirred every day or is it just like randomly occasionally or?
During the day or during the night?
It doesn't really say. And whether or not that was really happening or not, I don't know, but obviously something had happened at some time because you got a lot of people there. But you may be right. Maybe it was a dumping ground for all the sick and the disabled too.
I've always thought that the privilege, like the Pharisees and Sadducees, they had probably had better access to getting healed than the destitute did, and the people that didn't have money or didn't have this, that they probably had an express lane. What I was, I know, I'm serious. Knowing how, people revered people back then.
Yeah.
If you're a priest and you need something done, you don't think you're gonna go the head of the line?
Yeah. How many years has this guy been doing this?
38, too many.
38 years. So after 38 years and after, not being able to do this, what do you think his mentality was?
Talk about losing hope.
Hopelessness, he's dependent on being fed by others, being, on life, just life itself. A lot of these people probably just died there,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a good question.
That's
Are
when
they,
they were rolled in,
are they brought in at night? Are they brought home at night or what? You know what I mean? Is this, just a place to hang out? Who knows? I don't know. But these are people that are there because there's no hope of being healed either. There's nothing the doctors can do for them. There's nothing they can do to help themselves. And we know that nowadays it's sort of like having somebody come in and say you're stage 4. Okay, so at that point, that you pretty much no. It's sort of like I don't want to say degrees of cancer, but there sort of are. But anytime somebody says cancer to you, you think of it as a capital C versus a little c on cancer, even if you've got something that's treatable. Okay, it shocks you pretty hard the first time. So these things are happening, and this guy is in total despair. He's been there, and so Jesus comes up to him, and what does he ask him? Sort of a strange question.
Do you want to be healed?
Do you want to be healed? Why is that strange?
Why else would I be here if I didn't?
Yeah.
Well, at his age, too, he's basically survived, maybe minimally, but some people don't want change at that age. They can't handle it.
Right.
They're just, hey, this is all I know how to do. I don't know how to do anything. You see a lot with prisoners that spent their life in jail, and they come out of jail. They don't know how to relate and get along in society.
Okay. He's helpless, all is lost, all his life, and basically had a little bit of a pointed reply to Jesus.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know where my mind was last year. We read John during Lent, and I wrote many times, this is the pivotal question it may require of me what I'm not willing to do.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Am I willing to be healed? Interesting.
And he doesn't ever answer the question.
Well, he
He
basically,
gives an excuse.
Well, he just says, he doesn't say, yeah, I want to be well, but he just goes right into there's no hope for me.
well, he's a little bit, in my mind, he's a little bit indignant.
What do you think I'm here for?
Yeah. He's whining.
Yeah.
But Jesus felt like he wanted to be healed because Jesus healed him in a minute. Okay. But the issue is do you want to be healed? And then the answer is, of course I want to be healed, so to speak. I don't have anybody that can help me get in. By the time I drag myself to the water, some other slob has beat me into the water, Okay. I'm just watching people get ahead of me, all is lost. My life is lost, on that. Okay. So what does Jesus, okay, let's go to the next verse. What does Jesus say to him?
Get up, Jesus told him, pick up your mat and walk. Instantly the man got well, picked up his mat and started to walk. Now that day was the Sabbath. And so the Jews said to the man who had been healed, this is the Sabbath. The law prohibits you from picking up your mat. He replied, the man who made me well told me, pick up your mat and walk.
Okay. So how do you help people in despair? How do you help people that are hopeless?
Give them hope.
Give them hope. Okay. Jesus could have sit there and he said, well, there, it's going to be all right. Quit your whining. We're praying for you. This is really true. The angels doesn't come here and stir this water, and sit there and debate with him over what he's trying to do. Or you just feel sorry, or I guess you can just, nowadays, you just give him an antidepressant and say, everything's gonna be all right.
This guy didn't care if it was the Sabbath. He wanted to be healed.
right?
He didn't care about that part of it.
So when you run into people that are in despair, you gotta help them solve the problem. So Jesus, didn't give them platitudes, he didn't do anything. They need to be made whole, they need to be helped. Jesus helps them. Did Jesus say you were healed?
No,
No.
Not in so
Just
many
told him to
words.
get up as if you were you.
Yeah. It's sort of a matter of fact kind of thing.
Yeah.
Get up, pick up your mat and walk. So how'd the man respond?
He did it.
He did it. Can you imagine his first thoughts were, he's thinking, do what? But
He had to have felt something though in his leg to respond to that. Some indication. Because otherwise he wouldn't have known how to do anything. His legs have been numb, paralyzed for so long.
yeah, I mean, after how many of your legs still go to sleep on you?
Yeah, I mean, it's,
You feel them go to sleep and you sit there and you know better than to try to step up on them, right? Okay. So this guy would have done that, but something happened when Jesus spoke to him. He knew that he was able to do this.
Right.
He felt the power of Jesus in him that helped make him whole. So he sits there, he'd been an invalid or lame for 38 years, and all of a sudden he feels something instantly change in his life.
well, Hollywood, it would have been easy. There'd have been a light shining just down on him and you'd hear, oh, and he'd know to get up.
actually, if you haven't seen The Chosen does a very good job of
Okay.
that very healing.
My
event.
cousin, many years ago, was in a one-car accident, and he was near death like crazy, and he was in the hospital for years, and all of his muscles atrophied. I mean, where he couldn't bend a finger. They had to operate on all of his joints and like get him moving and all that. And this was just after several years. And he was able to, they don't know how, he was able to walk, not that good. And he was able to teach himself again how to ride a bicycle, not that good, and drive a car, but not that good, Everything he did was just, he would remind you of someone that had like muscular dystrophy or something like that. That's how he was affected by this. But to see him persevere and just whatever it took, operate on this shoulder, operate on this elbow, operate on that, just to unfreeze a joint or whatever. Can you imagine though, after 38 years, it would sure enough be a miracle.
Jesus did something in that man's life that changed everything. Hope changed. He saw life differently. The unthinkable becomes thinkable. The unthinkable becomes doable. So he's out probably dancing around. And who shows up?
Pharisees.
Okay. The Jews said to the man, what do they say?
You're breaking the law.
You're breaking the law. Now you just got probably, they come up, they don't come up and say, hey man, congratulations. You've been healed. You're walking great. Proud of you, man. They write him a ticket for breaking the law, right?
They get that big book out. Oh, you can't pick that mat up today. No, there it is.
Isn't it sort of interesting when the guys that make the laws also enforce the laws? So they're out,
And interpret them, not just.
yeah. So they're out wandering around.
There?
Do what?
Was there a policeman there keeping him from jumping into the water?
It may have been.
So they sit there and says, so you broken the law. How did he break the law?
Picked up his mat.
Okay, he's picked up his mat. You can't do that.
Consider doing work.
Okay, consider doing work. I thought I'd give you a list of the things they're doing. Nowadays, this is nowadays rules. on the Shabbat, which is Sabbath, okay, for them. Can't write, can't erase, can't tear. Can't do business transactions, can't drive or ride in a car or other vehicles. Can't shop. Can't use the telephone. Can't turn or on, off or anything that uses electricity. So lights, radios, television, computer, alarm clocks.
Turn it all on Friday night before it becomes dark.
Everything you turn on beforehand, dude, in fact, I'll give you an example in a minute. Back, the way they do elevators over there, I remember I used to think it's strange, but elevators will open on every other floor. So you basically, one's gonna be an even floor elevator, one's gonna be an odd floor elevator, so you don't push the button to get in or to for what floor, okay? And, you can't cook, bake, or kindle a fire, you can't garden or do grass mowing, you can't do laundry. So lights, they're needed to turn on beforehand, we just said. Automatic timers can be used for lights, but they have to be set before, sundown. Refrigerator can be used, but only if it does not break the law. So meaning if it has a light that comes on when you open the refrigerator door, you can't open the refrigerator door. So what they do on the refrigerator bulb is they unscrew it so that it doesn't come on when they're opening it, okay? Freezer, if you open it, a fan comes on, then you've broken the law, okay? So you see what's going on here, what you're doing on that, okay?
They took 10 sentences and turned it into volumes of volumes of volumes of interpretation.
Oh, yeah, it's huge. All the laws basically,
What
most of the ones are.
constitutes work, and there was also a limit on how far they could even walk.
Yeah.
During that time, during that day.
All right, so why could Jesus break the Sabbath?
He made the rules.
He made the rules. He's Lord of the Sabbath. The Sabbath was to honor God in Exodus, okay? Sabbath was intended as a day of physical and spiritual renewal, but it just became a bunch of restrictions, as we said, legalism.
But as Jesus said, the Sabbath was not, the man was not made for the Sabbath, but the Sabbath was made for the man.
Yeah.
It was made to benefit us, to be a benefit to us, not to be a burden to us.
Okay. So, did the man apologize for carrying his mat?
Not that we know
He's basically saying, hey, buddy, the guy that healed me told me to do this. By golly, after 38 years, anybody that heals me and tells me to do something, I'm going to do it. So he's basically saying, this is the way it's going to be. Now, why didn't he ask Jesus' name?
Probably too excited, and it's all about what had happened to him.
Excited. There's a lot of other people there. There's things going on.
But you don't know necessarily, that might have been another one of those, this guy healed me, I'm not about to snitch on him to the Jews and tell them who did this.
Well, you're gonna find out in a minute that he goes back to tell him. Okay, so hang on. So he basically was told to do something. He responded, no questions. He's excited. He's felt the power of God come on to him. Okay, so let's read the 3rd verse. Man, I got behind today.
Jesus replied, truly I tell you, the Son is not able to do anything on his own, but only what he sees the Father do. For whatever the Father does, the Son likewise does these things. For the Father loves the Son and shows him everything he is doing. He will show him greater works than these, so that you will be amazed. And just as the Father raises the dead and gives them life, so the Son also gives life to those who want.
Okay. Now, in between, they skip the good part.
Yep.
The Jews asked him, who's the man that said this to you, take up your bed, walk? The man who'd been healed did not know who he was, for Jesus had withdrawn. There was a crowd in the place, okay? So after Jesus found him in the temple later and said to him, see, you are well, sin no more, that nothing worse will happen to you. The man went away and told the Jews that it was Jesus who had healed him. And this was why the Jews were persecuting Jesus, okay? Because he was doing these things on the Sabbath. And Jesus answered them, my Father's working until now, and I am working. This is why the Jews were seeking all the more to kill him, because not only was he breaking the Sabbath, but he's even calling God his own Father. Okay? Making himself equal to God. Okay? Those are critical scriptures to what we're talking about today, the next verse. Okay? So the issue is and technically, our lesson was related to Jesus restoring life. But also, there's several things in our lesson today, but certainly the lesson, the issue of the Sabbath was in the lesson. The issue too now of is that Jesus and the Father are one. Okay, so you've almost transitioned to a new lesson. And so he says this, he says, truly I say to you, the Son can do nothing on his own accord, he's doing it with the Father. Okay, well, we know that. They're connected, they're God. Okay? Because they're in the middle of God's will, they share that connection on everything they do. Yes.
But if you're in a crowd hoping for a miracle, and you're all standing or sitting next to this guy, and he gets healed, why doesn't everybody else run toward Jesus?
Oh no, why didn't he heal anybody else?
He may not have been obvious in what he was doing there, when healing him and stripped out quietly.
Yeah, he may just whisper, take up your mat and walk. Now the guy next to him says, do what? You've been faking all these years. The issue going in. Jesus is talking about his relationship with God. He's showing that they're tied together. Technically Jesus and the Father are God, and he's showing that to him. He's basically saying what he just said. Why the Jews were hating him is because he's equated himself to God. Okay?
If God didn't want you healed on the Sabbath, Jesus couldn't have done it.
Yeah.
So God was giving permission to Jesus to heal. I mean, it's basic.
There was a lot going on about people claiming that he was doing things, casting out demons in the name of the devil.
Oh, I know.
And so a lot of what Jesus is doing is saying, hey, you say all this about the law, but if the Father is telling me to do these things, I'm going to do it.
Okay. So he's very obvious. These things he's claiming to be equal to the Father. The Jews understood that. They're mad. That's why they're plotting to kill him. The issue is we all have to die to self. To be able to see and realize God here, you got to die to self. We use another term, it's called making Jesus Lord. You're both one and the same. You're making Jesus. Jesus carries it even further here because he's saying is the Father, he's going to say, is going to give you even more works. Okay? He's going to give you even ability over life itself. Okay? He says, so the Father raises the dead and gives them life, so also the Son gives them life. Okay? So Jesus, how many people did Jesus raise back to life, not count himself?
Lazarus,
the
ruler's daughter.
When there's somebody's parent or were they just sick?
Simon Peter's mother was sick. She
Just
was
sick,
dead.
okay.
All right. So the first one was the widow's son in name.
Yeah.
Okay. In Luke. Then there was Jairus' daughter. It's in all three Gospels. And then there's Lazarus, which is just in John. Okay. Certainly then the grand finale was him rising from the dead. Okay. Jesus not only restored him, he also, singled this guy out from everybody else because of his attitude, because of his heart, or because maybe just as long as he's been there, basically showing, that through all the hopelessness, despair, that Jesus can come in and restore life. In conclusion, we have the same thing. Jesus picks us out of a crowd. God picks us out of a crowd too. Okay? We didn't know him. We need to know him. The other lesson here is that God the Father, when Jesus said that God the Father's working, he said he joined in with him. Okay? We need to find where God's working. We need to join in. We need to see what God wants us to do and use us. So this week, find somebody, that God is leading to. Share your testimony with them. Share with them, that God is working. And in you too. So, okay? Let's go to the Lord in prayer. Sorry I took y'all over. Father, thank you so much for what you've been doing in our lives. We thank you for our lesson today. Pray, Lord, you help us to strengthen us in what we're doing. Help us to help people that are in despair and hopeless, that they can know your love and know that you care and love them. In Jesus' name we pray. Thanks, guys. Take care, Doc.
Thanks, Buster.
So
Thank
we
you.
had to